style, always been a foul child. My guns go boom, 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 boom. Wild style, always been a foul child. My guns go boom, 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 boom. Wow, 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 wow,
Hi, my name's Leonard from Kosmic Sound and welcome to a Kosmic DJ special feature. We're talking about digital DJing today. It's something which is extremely prevalent now in the DJ market. Everyone's kind of into it and there's a lot of different options on the market. So I'm going to talk about something which I think is probably the best product on the market at the moment. It's what I use myself and it is Traktor Pro. They've just brought out a brand new version, Traktor Pro 2. So we're going to have a look through some of the features of this. I'm going to show you the interface, break it down a bit for you, and most importantly tell you how this is a tool that you can use as a DJ and how it can help improve your performances. So let's take a bit of a look at the new sound cards that are on offer with Traktor Pro and Traktor Duo in their second versions. They've brought out new ones to replace the Audio 8 and the Audio 4 sound cards, and they are called the Audio 6 and the Audio 10. You can obviously tell from the numbers you get an extra pair of inputs and outputs with these new sound cards, which is really great if you wanted to connect extra hardware, machine or any other sort of external product that you might want to add to your setup. Another really good new thing here is that they have plug-in power, so you can leave your entire setup plugged in and not worry about your decks going down if you pull your computer out. This USB port is a lot sturdier now, so it's less likely to come unplugged or accidentally get pulled out or tripped over if someone happens to do that. And another really good thing about it is that you can now connect any combination of CDs and turntables to it, and via your software, we'll go into the options here and just have a quick look at it. Go into audio setup and pull up settings, you'll get this utility which comes up. And through here I can actually change what I want the input to be. So we can have either phono or line on any different channel. We can also use them as direct throughs. So this is really good if you want to play a record. You can just chuck this on direct through, chuck your record on your turntable and start playing. All right, let's take a look at the interface. We're gonna just show you what's on the screen. So first thing you'll notice, it's changed a bit from the first version if you've used that. There's a lot more contrast between the different elements on the screen, so it's a lot easier to navigate and see what's going on. First thing you'll notice at the very top of the screen, there's just your top bar here. You want to watch out for things like your CPU meter, all that kind of stuff. It's pretty important. It gives you a clock there, which is really good when you're playing in a nightclub, so you can check what time you're running. And also, very importantly, your main volume. So if this actually hits red and you start peaking, you want to drop this little level down. That's an important one. Other thing up the top here as well is your different window layouts. You have a choice of 4 that are actually here by default. So you've got your Essential, which is just your 2 decks, your Extended, which is the one I started on there. Full browser view. You can actually also get this by hitting spacebar, And then if you're using something that uses internal mixing, something like a Control S4 or other DJ controller, you can use this version here so you can see the internal mixer within Traktor. If you're using an external mixer like I am here, then this doesn't really do much, so generally you don't need to see it unless you want to do things like filter and adjust the gains and that, but from this view here you can still see those bits anyway. So the next thing down, we have got this bar here. This has your effects and some of your clocking options. So by default you'll see it like this. You've got two effects banks, one on either side, and these are really good in Traktor. You have two different choices. You can have what's called a single, or you can have what's called a group. So you'll see the group side, we've got 3 different effects. So you've got a drop down menu here, you can pick any of these. You have an on switch for each one, and you have one knob you can use to control one element of this effect. By contrast, if you go over to a single effect, again you can choose from all your different effects, but you can only pick one. But in difference to the first thing, you've got one on switch and you've got 3 different parameters you can adjust, and there'll be 3 buttons here that'll do different things as well. We'll just play a bit of a track here and show you. So we've got a track going. If I turn this delay on, so I've got things that I can adjust the rate of. And this thing here is really cool. If I hit freeze, you hear it'll scatter out to nothing until I disengage it, and then everything will come back in again. All right, let's just have a quick look at some new effects you get in Traktor Pro 2. You get 4 new ones here. We've got a tape delay, that's your first one there. If we whack this on, you'll hear what it does. It's pretty self-explanatory, it just emulates an old style tape delay. You can hear we can increase the speed, slow it down. One thing I really like here as well is that you can freeze it and then disengage it, but the freeze will still last. And then you can change all this again. And it won't actually change until I drop the freeze out, and then it will go back to normal. Next one here is a ramp delay. Again, pretty self-explanatory. You can play with it and find out what the different things do. And then we have these other 2 which are called bouncer. There's a bouncer and an auto bouncer, and these are basically effects which break up the sound, and they're pretty interesting. We whack this one on, and instantly what you should hear is that it does strange buffering effects. It breaks the sound up, repeats at different rates. There's a bend thing here as well, and we can also transpose it. And if you get yourself into a bit of a mess and you want to drop back to default, then all you need to do is hit reset and everything will go back to the defaults. Probably another thing to mention quickly here is if you like the way that something's set up, say we want these parameters in this position, I can click this little thing here which is called snapshot, and what that will do is save an image. So when I go and change a few things and I say drop to another effect, and I'll go back to the auto bouncer again, it's actually gone back to the same parameters that I had saved from my previous setup. All right, so another thing in the global section we've got is the master clock panel. So here it is here, the clock panel. Basically, whatever setup you're running, you're going to need to do something in here, so it's important to learn how it works. You've got 2 options here, you've got master and auto. Now, if you're just going to be playing with time code, what you want to do is probably leave this on auto, and then Traktor will automatically select which deck is the master, depending usually on how much time's left in the track. Once you've mixed over to the one that's coming in, it'll set that to the master deck, and then you can mix your next one. If you're going to mix with controllers, probably turn this off, and then what that allows it to do is Traktor will set the master tempo. So basically Traktor sending the clock signal, everything else syncs to it. This is also pretty handy if you're going to be syncing out other external hardware to it. If you have a machine or something else that you want to bring into this setup, leave this on master, let Traktor set that clock. From here also you can set the tempo manually, you can tap it, you've got a push-pull system here as well, and finally you'll see here is a panel which is not illuminated because I haven't enabled it yet, but what this is for sending external sync signals to other hardware. Like I mentioned, the machine's one that you can do this with. All right, so let's take a look at the next section. So these are your decks, and this is what they look like. You can customize this to quite a large degree. We're going to show you a few things here. So first thing is the logo here with the letter on it of the deck. Gives you heaps of different options. If you want to just run sound straight through, you have a few different options here as well. We can change these from track decks to sample decks. I'll just do this on one of the ones I've got lower down here. So if we change it to a sample deck, we've got a few options we can go for here. We can either drag a sample that we've already prepared from our hard drive in here, and it needs to be a relatively short clip of audio. You don't want to be dragging whole tracks in here. It'll automatically sync to the tempo of your master, whether that be a deck or whether that's the internal clock. What we can do right now is I'll show you how you can do this from a track that you might be playing. So I'll just get a track going here, and all you need to do is basically set a loop size. So now I'm just grabbing 2 beats worth. I can then pick this up from here and drag it down in there. And then what you'll notice, if I turn this one off, I can then bring in the loop I've just captured. And in the sample deck as well, I've got things like I've got a filter, I can adjust the level of the sample. And also, it's another thing that's really good over here is I've got a master filter as well. So if I happen to have 4 samples loaded in here, I want to actually filter all of them at once. I've got a filter that I can use right here. Obviously, just like normally you'd have a high pass filter moving to the right hand side, and it's a low pass filter moving to the left. You can also run your samples either as continuous loops or just one shots. So if you do that, it'll just play it and then stop. So really good here. You know, you get a lot of your sort of reggae R&B guys that want to drop in one-shot samples. Perfect for that. You can drop in whatever sound effect you want, hit it once, off it goes, and then it'll stop when it's finished. The other advantage of this is that you can also apply effects to this as well. So if I, this side effect, and if I just get the sample playing, if I want to get a reverb on here, I can have that happen. I can change the parameters there. We can chuck a bit crusher on it. So whatever you want, whatever effects you want to load up on your samples, you can do that. And gives you a lot more options to creatively work with sounds. If you can mix 2 decks, you can have 2 decks of samples. If you wanted to, you could have 4 decks of samples. It's really whatever you want to do. Other things you'll notice in the window here is I've got this thing here. Now this shows me when I've got a record playing, the position that I'm in. So you can see as I move the record, indicator on there changes. Really good for guys that scratch. The other thing that's really good here, which was a lot harder to get going in the original version of Traktor, if I just click this once, I go straight to my calibration page. And I can see straight away that my vinyl's working well. I've got some good rings here, it knows what side it's on, so that's really great. If you had problems, you can actually recalibrate from here as well. And the other thing that I really like is if you're sick of looking at this, just hit that and it goes away completely. So you get your whole window back. Once you've got your vinyl sorted, you can just get that out of the way. All right, so let's have a bit of a look at some other things that you get in the deck section. What I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna change my layout back to essential. So I'm just gonna go back to 2 decks for a while, and we're gonna have a look at this little drop down here. So when you drop this down, you get 3 different things that you can do here. Generally, the top one, the move thing, you won't use a lot. You'll find if you have something like a Control X1, it automatically uses a lot of the things that are in here without any mapping. So, I mean, I'd always recommend having 1 or 2 of these depending on your setup anyway. Next thing down is your queuing, which I'll come to in a second. And the bottom one here is your gridding. This is a really important concept in Traktor. Pretty much everything runs off the grid in terms of your tempo, your syncing, your effects, so it's really important to get this right. So I've already done this one. I usually lock mine when I've done them so that the grid can't be destroyed, but I'm just going to unlock it just to show you how this works. At the very beginning of the track, what you need to do first of all is drop a beat marker. I've actually got one here that actually loads to this point, but generally there's one sitting behind it as well, which is called a grid marker. You set one of these at the beginning and that represents your first beat, and then you'll see all these coloured lines here, or the grey lines, all representing where the beats fall. And you have an ability here to move the grid from the left to the right and vice versa, and to actually shrink and expand the grid if the tempo is actually set wrong. Once you've finished, you can lock this away. Generally, I'd recommend doing this when you get new tracks. If you go and have a big session on Beatport and you've got a whole bunch of new tracks, best thing to do is do this straight away when you've got your tracks, so you're not having to go and do this through 1,000 different tracks when you're preparing for a set. The other one I mentioned here is your cue points. Now this is really, really good. This enables you to jump to different sections in the track. So you can see I've got a number of different sections loaded in this track. And the other thing it enables you to do is to set a load marker, which I really like as well. So for example, I've got a track here that it has an intro on it, and I might not necessarily want to play that all the time. So I set a load marker, so Traktor will by default load to that point in the track. So when I hit play, it just starts from that position rather than going back to the beginning of the track. You can store up to 8 cue points. You can also store your loops in there if you have certain loops that you want. You can go in here and name them if you want, heaps of different options. So that is the advanced section on the deck. Just one more thing I'll mention on the decks, there's a couple of new things in Traktor Pro 2, and that is the colouring of your waveforms. This used to be just yellow by default, you couldn't change it, it's just how it was. You get a couple of different options now, so you can set this up however you want. If you go into decks, down the bottom here we've got colour mode. I like it on ultraviolet, it's blue, it looks cool, so I generally leave it on that one. You've also got infrared, which is obviously different shades of orange-red spectrum. X-ray, which is just grey, and then one down the bottom here, which people use Serato will be familiar with, is spectrum. And this will actually use colours to show you different frequency bands. So the red one's bass, blue, further you get into the blue spectrum is higher and higher into the treble range. You will notice though, even if you're on ultraviolet, you'll get different shades. So the darker blue is bass, where we've got sections that are going into light blue like this, or close to white, they are purely just treble sections. All right, the next thing to take a look at is the browser section. And this is probably one of my favorite things about Traktor Pro. It's probably a bit geeky to say it, but you can really organize your music to excess. You can really get your collection however you want it. Those of us that remember vinyl, you know, you used to have all your different crates of vinyl, maybe set by genre or by BPM or however you set it up. You can do this exact same thing in Traktor. So generally, if you look at the way I've got my collection, I have a folder for every genre that I have music in. I also have a couple of other folders on here as well. So when I download new music, I save everything by date, so I know when I got my last bunch of tracks. And same thing if I go and play a set or I do a recording, I keep a track list of all those sets. So I've got all those there if I need to refer back to those lists. You can set up exactly what you want to see in this browser as well. So you've got a whole range of different things you can check out. Generally, I find having just your title, artist, genre, those kind of things is important. BPM can be handy as well if you're just wanting to find out where you can mix two tracks together. So all that you can find in your browser. You also have the favorite section along the top here. So if there's a few things that I want to refer to all the time, I can drop these in here and they'll just sit there and you can refer to them very, very quickly. As far as importing your music, you can do this in a number of different ways. My personal preference is I like to keep my music organized in folders like this. So when I go into my music, I've got things organized by the date that I downloaded them, and then I can just drag that entire folder, as I showed before, into a by date folder. And then from there, I actually will pull them out and organize them into genres or however else I want to organize them. You can also do this directly from the browser. If you go into Explorer, you can see your music folders, you can have all that there or straight from your hard drive. You also have the option of importing straight from your iTunes library if you want to do it that way. Another thing that you can also do is put a CD straight in and get music from the CD or even from an iPod. That's probably a really excellent feature of Traktor. If someone was to hand you a CD or an iPod or something on the night of your gig and they want you to play a track, you can grab it straight from there and whack it into your set. Finally, the other thing I do really like is this browse section at the top. So this is a search bar. So all you need to do if I want to find a track by myself, I can drop that in there and it will show me all of my tracks. This will also browse all fields. So if I want to find tracks from a certain label, I can do that. That's all my tracks from Cocoon. Same thing goes with track titles. I can search by track titles and find all the remixes of a given track. Okay, so looping, another thing that Traktor is quite famous for. It's got a really great system in here for looping any parts of your tracks that you might want to do. Everything locks in time, it all syncs to the tempo of the track. And as I mentioned before, the beat gridding really comes into play here. If your beat grid's off, then you're going to have all kinds of problems looping, as well as doing things like using effects and syncing to other tracks, but looping is certainly affected by this. Very simple, especially if you've got a Control X1. I'm just going to do it on here. You can do this with your mouse or with another controller, but this is just basically designed for it. It's ready to go, it's mapped, it's perfect for the job. Get our track playing. I'm going to capture a 1-bar loop, so I'm going to set 4 beats. And there we've got 4-beat loop just happening automatically. I can also shrink the loop, I can grow it up to as large as 32 beats. I can get it down as low as 1/32 of a beat. If we keep it here. I can also do things like pick the loop up and move it. So if I hold down Shift and then I twist my knob here, it will move the loop around in the track. The other thing I can affect here is if I hold down the in button and I move the loop knob, I can move the loop out of time. So this can be really cool if you wanted to do something like having 4 tracks running, break them all up, get them all sitting out of time, and then hit out of your loops and drop back in and have everything slam back in on time. Really good for that kind of thing. I can drop out of the loop very simply by clicking the knob again. I can also set manual in and out points, so I can go in, out. There you go, so I've grabbed that manually, and then again I can tweak away and change that with the knob. Another couple of things that probably pretty important to mention at this point are snap and quantize. You'll see these up here underneath the main volume knob. Snap means that anything that I do will always snap to the grid. So for example, if I want to set up a loop or a cue point, if I turn this off, you can see it will happen at any random point within the music. It's not snapping to the grid. If I turn snap back on, you can see that I can only ever hit a loop or start a loop on a grid line. Quantize is a similar thing. What this means is it doesn't mean that things will snap to the grid, but it means that everything will happen in time. So if I turn quantize off, I can do all kinds of random things. If we jump around to some different cue points, for example, I can do this. It can be all off time. If I have quantize on, everything will sit to a beat, so I can never actually do anything wrong, basically. Kind of handy if you're mixing with 3 or 4 decks. Really keeps your sets together, and if you're doing things like that, you don't really want to be worrying about keeping things in sync, so snap and quantize are definitely good things to have on. If you're wanting to get more control and fine control over what you're doing, if you're using time code, or if you just want to be able to jump around very quickly with cue points, probably don't have those things turned on. So another great thing about this new version of Traktor Skratch Pro is something called soft syncing. Now previously syncing was pretty much the realm of controllers. You couldn't really do it with timecode. Wasn't really a good idea anyway, but they found some new reasons that people might want to do this, and usually they're going to be guys who are going to be wanting to drop in tracks very quickly, load a track and instantly get into it. So I'll show you how this works anyway. So what you need to do first of all, we'll get one track going. And we'll get my second one ready. So now if I hit sync on here, the tempos are now completely matched. Bring this one up. Where this is different from normal syncing with controllers is I can actually drag this out of time. So essentially what it means is the tempo is synced but the phase is not synced. You have control over where the 2 tracks sit in relation to each other, but I can just as easily push this one back in. And there they are, perfectly aligned again. So we've been having a look at the new version of Traktor. We've got Traktor Pro and Traktor Skratch Pro, both in their second versions now. We've given you a bit of a run through of all the features of the software, how it works, how hopefully you can use it in your sets. We should probably just talk a little bit about hardware as well. There's a lot of different accessories you can get for Traktor. You've got Control X1s, which I've been using today. There's also a few different configurations you can buy it in. You have Traktor Pro, Traktor Skratch Pro, Traktor Duo and Traktor Skratch Duo, and all of these will be slightly different. You need to be very careful when you're buying them. If you want to use timecode records or CDs, you must buy the Scratch version. The straight box software version will not work, so you need to make sure you have timecode records and you also have an Audio 10 or an Audio 6 sound card. You can still use the old Audio 2, 4 and 8 sound cards as well, so feel free to, if you've already have one of those, just get the upgrade pack. So please come in store and see us if you need any more information at Kosmic Sound, or check us out online at kosmic.com.au. Thank you very much.